So we are good. Welcome, everyone. So we're meeting today with representatives of Clear Ballot and our elections department and clerk and recorder to just really to learn about the Clear Ballot system. This is a workshop, so it's open to the public, but it's live streamed and recorded for the future. So I would ask if you're speaking to use the mics, but we'll run around the table, do some introductions, and then I'd like to turn it over to Rhonda to kind of talk a little bit about where we are in terms of the current contract with our current system ending this year and why we're here. So I'm Chris Richardson, Commissioner for District 1 and Board Chair.
Al Schroeder, Commissioner, District 2.
Rhonda Braun, Elbert County Clerk and Recorder.
Stephanie Ferris, Election Manager.
Amber Fisher, IT.
Jerome Lovato, Clear Ballot Group.
Grant Thayer, Commissioner, District 3.
Kyle Rulli, Clear Ballot Group.
All righty, thanks much. Rhonda, thank you for pulling this together.
Yes, and thank you for Clear Ballot for coming and demonstrating their equipment and having this conversation today. Our voting system contract is up at the end of December of this year, and there are only 2 systems that are certified by the state of Colorado that we can use, and that's Dominion, which we currently have, and Clear Ballot. We are required by law to use how do they say it? Electromechanical voting system. And so we wanted to hear from both systems before we make a decision on which system we would like to go with in the future going forward. So we will still be using the Dominion system through this November for the presidential election, but then starting in 2025, we're looking at our options on where we need to go from there.
Thank you. Did you have anything you wanted to mention to start with?
I don't think to start off with.
Okay, and I'll turn it over to you, to Jerome. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and thank you all for having us. Once again, my name is Jerome Lovato. My current title at Clear Ballot is Director of Certification. Briefly about me, I was a former Colorado elected official. I worked for the Colorado Secretary of State for about 10 years, worked for the U.S. Election Assistance Commission for a few years, and actually I'm currently a City of Centennial Election Commissioner. So I live in Centennial, Colorado native, but I've been in elections for a long time, especially around voting systems and election administration stuff here in our home state. So we appreciate the opportunity to present on our system. I'll turn it over to Kyle here in just a bit, but I'll just go ahead and start in the presentation, and then when Kyle takes it over, I'd like him to introduce himself and his background as well. The next slide, please, Kyle. So briefly about Clear Ballot, we currently serve approximately 40 million registered voters in the United States. So on the graph here, we show 13 states. We're certified here in Colorado, Kansas, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Oregon, Washington, Wisconsin, and soon to be Virginia as certified voting systems. The other states, Florida, Maryland, New Hampshire, Vermont, South Carolina, those states, we use us to do results verification. So essentially we do third-party audits. That's one of our other products. So in Florida, for instance, we have our certified results verification system where by law in Florida, they can rescan ballots. So if they use, for instance, like ES&S, during their flow of their election, they actually rescan those ballots in our system. and use our system as a results verification system. So when they have to do post-election audits, they use our system for that. Maryland and South Carolina the same, where they actually right now some of our staff are doing the Maryland audit for their primary. So that's a little bit about kind of our footprint in the U.S. We currently, next slide please, currently have certified our system in Garfield and Douglas here, but just a brief history of the company. We were founded in 2009. We actually were used for the first RLA pilot in Arapahoe County. I actually was working on that. I was the RLA project manager for the state of Colorado at the time when Clear Ballot came in, and we rescanned the Sequoia ballots at Arapahoe County to kind of do our first RLA pilot in the state.
Excuse me, what is RLA?
Oh, risk limiting audit.
Okay,
Sorry
thank
about
you.
that. You get so used to, I kind of feel like a federal government employee now, like throwing all the 3-letter acronyms out, right? Like,
Much
I
appreciated.
gotta catch myself there. Thanks for asking there. As a product, we officially launched Clear Audit in 2012. Our first certified system was Clear Vote in Oregon in 2015, and then around that same time, actually, Clear Ballot did a live pilot in Colorado for new voting systems in the state. We were officially certified in Colorado with our first system in 2017. And then just kind of fast forwarding to now, we were certified for our Clear Vote 2.3 system in Colorado last year. And that's what we're going to be doing our demo of today. And as I mentioned earlier, we're continuing to grow our footprint in the U.S., especially with our certified voting systems. Here in about a little under 2 weeks, we should be certified in Virginia, and then looking at other states as well. So that's kind of where we are as a company and who we are. Even though we're based our headquarters is in Boston, we have 4 staff members here in Colorado. So Kyle Ruley, Carolyn Callie lives in Highlands Ranch. Kyle lives in Littleton, and then another coworker lives in Grand Junction. So we do all of our manufacturing in the United States, and Nashua, New Hampshire is where we do our manufacturing. And that's where our engineering group is largely based in that area, in the Nashua, New Hampshire area. And then we have everywhere where we have a product, we have staff there. So if, for instance, in Washington, we have staff members in Washington State, the same for Oregon, obviously here in Colorado. Actually, the only place we don't have full-time staff would be Kansas. We have, just because our footprint is small there for now, so everywhere else we have full-time staff there. And one thing about Clear Ballot when it comes to election support is that we don't hire contractors to do election support. They're full-time Clear Ballot staff. And so come, this November, I'll be in Huron, Ohio. That's just how we work. We don't hire temp staff to go and support our customers. It's full-time staff, whether it's someone in a position like myself or an engineer, and then we also have a full professional services staff, which is the group Kyle is a part of that he'll talk about in his presentation. But I just want to kind of make mention of that, because I know that having worked in this space, I know that other vendors, especially around election time, will hire contractors or other staff members. What we take pride in offering, the best customer service, which means that actually having full-time staff supporting our customers. So that's one of the nice things I like about working working for Clear Ballot. Next, I believe.
If I could,
Sure.
You had mentioned on the timeline, federal certification and Colorado certification, just kind of at a high level, what does that certification process look like, or what are they looking at prior to certification?
Okay, yeah, so at the federal level, the systems are tested to what's called the Voluntary Voting System Guidelines, or VVSG. And so it's a pretty exhaustive list of requirements: security, accessibility, usability, and so, you know, with a new system, it'll go through have to meet the requirements spelled out in the VVSG, and so that a timeline process that usually takes anywhere from 6 to 9 months. With the new system, because it's independently tested. So the EAC is responsible for accrediting independent test labs, and there's a process for that, which I oversaw when I worked at the agency. And so they accredit test labs, and right now there are 2 federally accredited test labs, ProVMV, which is based in Huntsville, Alabama, and SLI Compliance, which is based in Wheat Ridge. And so typically the process is like, so when we enter certification at the federal level, and this is how all the vendors are too, they'll contract with a lab. So for us, it's ProVMV in Huntsville, and say, okay, we want to be federally certified. There's some pre-testing paperwork that we have to comply with by the federal program manual. And then from there, it gets into testing and a lot of reports and a lot of back and forth with the labs. So for like hardware testing, that's for both ProVMV and SLI, that's done usually at a lab called NTS in Longmont. NTS is also an accredited lab that does a lot of testing for a lot of products, consumer products, like everything pretty much. But they use those labs because they have the capabilities to do different, a battery of hardware tests. So vibration testing, power testing, a lot of different types of tests that I'm not gonna bore you with the details of. But it goes through a lot of testing on that side of the process, and it's independent, so we can't, as a vendor, can't go and persuade the lab and say, no, why don't you not look at that, right? And even on the government side, it's the same, where on the government side, the state and federal side, if we see something that may look like an anomaly from the lab or from the vendor, and I've played that role in my career, where it's like, okay, well, you need to do a root cause analysis. You know, this anomaly popped up in testing, so you need to provide a root cause analysis and a fix for it, you know, before it actually gets to the process of certifying the equipment. And so I've been on both sides of the coin now, of now on this side of my life and in my career. It's like the frustration of dealing with government, and the other side was the frustration of dealing with vendors. So I've gotten a taste of both worlds. And so that's kind of what it looks like at a high level for federal. And then on the state side, particularly when it relates to Colorado, Colorado doesn't require EAC certification or federal certification, but they use it as a baseline. So if a system doesn't meet, if Colorado has specific requirements that are kind of above what's federally required. For instance, one example is producing cast vote records in a CSV format. That's a unique Colorado requirement. And so if a system that's federally tested and certified doesn't meet that, then the vendor will have to get that tested, or any other Colorado requirements. So if there are, say 20 requirements that are just unique to Colorado, we as a vendor would then have to go through that extra testing process of meeting the Colorado specific requirements. And that's how it is broadly across the U.S. Some states just, all they need to see is an EAC certificate, and other states are like, okay, that's good, but we want to see more. Or even may not even be a certification process itself, other than additional examination, through a public demo or something like that. But that's certification at a high level. Hopefully it answered some questions. Like I can make everybody fall asleep here today if you want. I don't want to make myself fall asleep.
At the state level, is it the SOS that tests it, or do they use one of these labs for the state testing?
Yeah, the SOS also uses the labs, and they typically use ProVMV.
Okay.
But the state can use really whoever. I actually started my career at the state testing, like back in 2007 when I started in elections. The state itself did testing. We had a space in the office there downtown where we were actually physically doing all the testing except for that specialized hardware testing I had mentioned earlier, when you just need different capabilities and equipment to do that kind of stuff. But outside of that, I actually did the hands-on testing of voting systems in Colorado before we moved to contracting with the independent labs. Okay, next, Kyle. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to Kyle Ruley, and like I mentioned earlier, he'll introduce himself and his past election experience.
So my name is Kyle Ruley. I'm a customer relations manager for ClearBallot. Formerly, I was in Douglas County as an election official from 2015 to 2022. And I actually worked on the system, so I do have firsthand knowledge of running elections with the system. As Jerome mentioned, the group that I work in, my team, is called Professional Services, and we're all made up, all of us CRMs are made up of former election officials. So, we're not just people off the street. We've done this before. Former state directors, former county directors, folks like me who worked, I wasn't a director, but I worked very closely with the director and ran elections. So that's our team. That's kind of what we're made up of. And I'll just kind of briefly go over our products, and then I'll do an actual demo of what some of this stuff looks like. So I'll just kind of hit some of the high-level points. So Clear Design is our ballot design software. So this allows the election officials to import their data from SCORE, which is the Colorado voter registration database. All election officials start their election in the state database, and so they can import their data into our system from that system, allowing them to save a lot of time without having to recreate a bunch of things from scratch, like your districts, precincts, splits, and contests.
Hey, Kyle, does that template just stay on the system, or do you send us out a thumb drive every single election to put in?
No, so the way that our system works is we give you a blank slate. So every election is brand new, and you kind of create it from scratch. What you can do is kind of create your own template election, it would just be a shell of an election. So it would have all of your artwork in there, and then you can import the data from the SCORE, from the state system, and then just do what you need to, edit the contest, make sure all of your headers line up, make sure your instructions look okay. So you can start out with that. You can take the time to build this. It's sort of a template, but not in the sense that some other vendors do, that some of us may be familiar with. So we give you that flexibility, but you have the ability to create something that sort of has all that information that you'll need from election to election without having to recreate it from scratch every time.
That,
So it's something that I can, I would work with you on to figure out, hey, what do you want this to say? How do you want it to look? But we don't necessarily dictate what that template would look like.
for the data input from SCORE, is that kind of networked, or does that come over on a thumb drive, or?
Yeah, so our entire system is air-gapped. Nothing's connected to the internet. That's how all voting systems are. But in this instance, you would load it onto a thumb drive and then bring it over to this system. And that would be the same for any other kind of exports out of our system that need to go to something else. It's all air-gapped, so it does require data transfer with a thumb drive. So our system runs in says a familiar browser interface. To not get too technical, basically our software runs on a local web server. So you're doing everything in the software, and it kind of looks like a website, so it's very familiar. There's blue hyperlinks for everything, so whenever you see blue, you can click on it. It's something that most of us are very familiar with these days using computers, but it also allows just that flexibility, so you can zoom into the interface, things like that. And I'll kind of show that as I go through as well. We have a flexible ballot layout. I'll show a little bit more about that later on, but this just allows you to make very minor changes as needed to make your content fit in the way that you want it to look. We have a very easy step-by-step process. I mean, literally, you're just going down to each section and just kind of checking things off and working through the system so that you don't really have to backtrack too much. And then also just seamless integration with the rest of our products. Clear Access is our accessible ballot marking device. So this is ADA community tested. We work with the Perkins School for the Blind in Boston, and they actually test all of our products and give us feedback, whether that's the user interface on the actual device or even just the handheld touchpads. So they actually give us feedback into design for our future products as well. And that's very important, that partnership for us. One of the biggest standouts with our product versus our competitors is there's no differentiation between the ADA ballot and other ballots. And so by that I mean anybody that uses this device, whether it's somebody that needs it for ADA purposes, or if a jurisdiction wants to use this as their primary voting method, these devices have always and always will print out a full-face ballot. We don't print any kind of summary ballot that's just text or a barcode, nothing that differentiates it from the other ballots. It's always that same exact ballot that's going to be mailed to every voter in the state of Colorado. And it's always been like that, and we will never change that in our product.
Colorado is now requiring that.
Yeah, and that's what we've heard as well. So we understand that too. Yeah, but this product, this is like this in other states for us too, where our competitors are doing those summary ballots, but we're doing the same ballot. So this device can print up to 22 inches, just like all your other ballots. It's never going to look any different from the other ballots that are mailed. This device also exceeds ADA requirements. It also has headphones, a keypad, all that kind of stuff, and everything that's required. So we have a couple different options for this device in particular. We have a mobile soft transport case. This is more for a tabletop design like I have in front of me over here. And we also have on the right, you'll see, it's in an ATA case. We call it a roadie case, just because it does look like, the cases that roadies use. These things are extremely durable. We've heard stories about them falling off of trucks because, this equipment has to be transported, and it's not always in the nicest ways possible, but it survives. And it's very secure. Actually, Douglas County just purchased to replace all of their equipment. They just replaced those on the right, and they're pretty happy with them so far. Another device we have for ADA purposes is called ClearMark. So this will be included with our next certification next year, 2.5. So this is a little bit of a unique device. We build this completely in-house, and it was originally built for New York and a lot of New York requirements, but we are bringing it to the rest of our customers with our next version. So it does have a built-in thermal printer that prints extremely fast, and I believe up to ballot lengths of 30 inches. Something I hope we never see in Colorado because they're just huge. But the paper is made to be archivable, I think, for up to 10 years. You can set it up in landscape or portrait mode, so that device that's kind of on the left, that could be turned in any way. It was also tested at the Perkins School for the Blind. There's another option for a ballot verification scanner where the voter can print their ballot and then put it back in the scanner, and then the device will actually basically look at all the ovals and read back to you what it's seeing. So that was a specific New York requirement, but we do have the option of selling that as well. And then again, it only prints full-face ballots. So same thing with ClearMark. There is a tabletop version or the transport ATA case. And then finally, ClearCount. That is our ballot tabulation software. So this is kind of our bread and butter. This is what we started out with for audits as well. So we have our vote visualization. This allows you to see every oval on every ballot, all on one screen, and I'll show more of that later on. We do have transparency in the system, and we have other products like in Maryland where we can actually upload all of the data from ClearCount into it, and it's a voter-facing transparency portal where the public can go in and look at all of our tabulation and how things work. We can look at overvotes, write-ins, unreadables. Unreadables being a ballot that might be damaged where the scanner couldn't necessarily tell what precinct it was supposed to belong in. I'll talk more about that later. We have a lot of, and that kind of leads into the next bullet point of adjudication. You don't have to remake ballots with our system unless they're completely destroyed, like the dog ate it. And then we have easy ballot image exports. So, for the public records requests of ballot exports, for those images, we can easily export those. And then exports for the Colorado risk limiting audits. And then just a little bit more about our on-site support. So we will help you with just about everything. So like Jerome said, he's local and Centennial. I'm just up in Littleton. We have somebody else who has, I think, over 30 years of elections experience in Highlands Ranch. And so we're always there to support our customers. We can assist with ballot coding, logic and accuracy testing, for your pre-election testing of your ballots, election day support, and remote support. We do, for your first election, we do provide that on-site support for election day and your first election. But then, I'm always a phone call away. Douglas County, Garfield County, they're still reaching out to me for various things. Anytime they need help, we're available to assist. I think that's it for the slideshow, so I'll move into the product demonstrations. So this is Clear Design. This is, again, our ballot design software. So within this software, you can create, obviously, elections because that's kind of necessary for this purpose. And then you can create users, and you can create users with their own specific permissions. So for instance, if you had somebody that, all I want them to do is proofread the ballot, you can create user permissions where all they can do is just view the ballot. So we have different levels of permissions for that as well. So this election, I've already kind of built this out, but I'll kind of just run through some of the high-level points here. So on this main page, this import data button, we can import data from SCORE, from the voter registration system. And that includes all of your districts, precincts, splits, contests, candidates, most of what you would need. And then usually the jurisdiction will just go through and format for kind of artistic styling and just make sure everything makes sense to the voters as they go through the ballot. Let's see. We have a number of different reports that can be generated for proofing the elections. So, I mean, the elections are about getting it right. You only have one chance to do it. So, everybody's going through and proofing and making sure, do my contest line up? Does everything match? So we have a million different reports for anything that anybody might need to proof that information. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. So we have any content that's being edited on the ballot. We have a number of different options. So you'll kind of look at this and see it sort of looks like a word processor. That is, by design, it looks very familiar. And there's a lot of different options for really formatting the content to your needs and to the way that you want it to look. So again, we don't provide very specific guidelines or formats or templates. This is up to the jurisdiction to decide how they want their ballots to look. And we can work with them, on figuring some of those things out. So, for instance, these instructions that I put together, it's a little complex because there's tables nested within here. There's, different size of text. There's images, that kind of stuff. But this was all really custom made to how I wanted to build it out. At the same time, we also allow a jurisdiction to use HTML code to build things out. So if they're a little more advanced and they know how to do some of this stuff, or there's just something little that needs to be tweaked, this is kind of like building a web page. And so they're able to really fine-tune some of this stuff. I speak from experience because the first template that I put together when I was at Douglas, I think I spent like 2 weeks learning the code so that I could figure out exactly how I wanted it to be. So it is really neat to have this flexibility in here. We can also create different ballot sets. So you'll see within here, there's a ballot set for property owners. There are times where property owners may be allowed to vote on an issue in Colorado, and so there's just some easy ways of being able to do that within our system. Jump back to here, languages. We can support a number of languages. I don't think you have any requirements in Elbert, but the option is there. We do have jurisdictions like King County, Seattle, Washington. They have like 7 different languages. So we can support that via the text on the ballot and audio with translations. This next tab here, device messages. So this gives the jurisdiction the flexibility to customize the clear access or clear mark device and change just about any message on there. So if there's something that just doesn't make sense to them, they can really customize this to their needs. And then also audio for the ADA device, because that is a requirement for somebody to be able to hear the ballot. The audio can be generated within the Clear Design system. It can be recorded by the election official directly into the system, or you can export all of the text, and we have a free online tool that does a really good job of kind of, translating that text to speech. And then it also allows the jurisdiction to really fine-tune the names to make sure that they are pronounced properly as well. Once the jurisdiction has laid out their ballots, they can actually go in here, and it'll take a second to load up. They can actually proof what the device is going to sound like and look like right within our ballot design software, instead of having to export everything out and take it over to the device and get the device set up. In Colorado, there's a lot of security rules, so you have to unseal the device. There's a lot that has to be done. We can do this right within our system. So it allows them to go through and proof this information right away.
Help. How to vote. To vote for the candidate of
I
your
believe
choice,
this is the
touch
built-in
that person's
voice.
name.
Like I said, there's
The box
some
will
other
change
voices
color.
that can be used
If you
with the
want to change your vote or
text-to-speech.
if you make a mistake,
But this just
first
kind of gives
touch
you an
the
idea
choice
that we
you
can
no
do that
longer
right
want.
within our system, saving a
color
lot of
will be-
time and hassle with having to proof that information. They can also proof the actual ballot in here too. So this is what the ballot actually is pretty much going to look like once you've generated your PDFs to send off to your ballot printer, or if you're going to print anything in-house. So this, again, same thing, just saves a lot of time. The generation to actually lay this out really takes, maybe a minute or two. It's very fast. I've had experiences with other systems that took several minutes, and sometimes that, you don't have that time. You're trying to make those fast changes. And so we can do that very quickly. Also within here, I'd kind of mentioned this earlier, but there are sometimes, just minor layout things that kind of drive you nuts when you're laying out ballots, and maybe you just need to make some quick changes. This doesn't happen too often, but we have the ability to do it, where you could actually take a contest and kind of move things around as needed. If I needed to stretch it just to fill up some space, I can do some different things. You wouldn't see this happen too often, but the ability is there. And sometimes, every once in a while, that you just need that little bit of space. So that's where this can help out. And as I mentioned, so as part of kind of creating your own template, there's a number of different styles in here. So these are text styles, and you can change all these different styles just like you would in Microsoft Word. There's kind of at the top, and it says, title and, paragraph, that kind of stuff. So they can customize the actual text and then apply these styles to each of the text. So you might have, for a contest, county commissioner is one line, and you want that to be bolded and size 16, and then the next line is going to say vote for one, and I want that to be normal and size 8. So they can set all that, preset all that, so that when you're going through and you're just kind of massaging the visual part of the ballot, you can just select the text, hit the button, and then you're done. You don't have to, remember, oh, was it bold and 16 point, all those different things. So once this is set, it makes it a lot faster to create the ballot. And then they can also set these different templates. So we have a number that are pre-built in here, and most of what's in here is what most of our customers use. As I said, we can do, I believe, up to a 22-inch ballot on this printer over here, so they can preset that in the software. So they never really have to, remake that and say, hey, I want a 22-inch ballot. They can just set that in there. I know I use 11-inch in my primary, 14 in, my coordinated, and 22 in my general, so they're always in there. So that's clear design. Are there any questions about this particular?
Are they paper rolls? Is that how?
So this printer in particular, this uses just your normal paper stock that you might get in a ream from your vendor. For our clear mark, which we don't have here, that does use paper rolls.
Okay, so the BMDs are rolls. So we don't have to have stock for those?
Yeah, so it's kind of up to you. So you can either do this option of a normal laser printer, or you can do the thermal printer that has the rolls and use those instead. So let me just make sure I'm logged in here. I'm going to turn this on. So I'm just going to go through and kind of show you. So this is, we've already built the ballot, and now we're going to go in and set up our tabulation system. And I just like to show this because it is very easy to do in our system. So we have these two buttons here, export BDF and export ADF. Our BDF is our ballot definition file, so this contains all the information about the, again, the districts, precincts, contests, your vote for rule, all that kind of stuff. And then that goes into our tabulation system to define the election. Export ADF next to it, that's your accessible definition file. That's for the ballot marking device over here. So if I export this, this just gives me a file that gets downloaded. And then we're just going to create the election. So this is within our tabulation system. And everything's encrypted going into the tabulation system. And now our election is ready to be scanned. We can scan ballots into it. It just takes a couple seconds to do. And this really allows, again, to the jurisdiction to save a lot of time. When you're building your ballot, you want to test it and make sure that everything's working properly. And within 15 seconds, I was able to have the election ready to go and ready to scan ballots into it.
So we don't have to have an I button or a thumb drive or anything and put in the tabulation system?
So depending on how your setup is, the ballot design server is separate from the tabulation server, and occasionally jurisdictions will have separate stations as well, just to keep them separated from one another. So if they were in that instance, you would have a thumb drive that you take over to your other station, but it's a fast process. Okay, so actually, let me, I'm going to bounce back over to our ballot marking device. If I can make this work. So again, this is our ballot marking device. It's a kind of a small tablet here, and then there's always a printer included. So the poll,
You all can go check that out and even vote ballot if you'd like a closer look.
Yeah. So the poll worker would enter a PIN for a code for the voter, and then they would select the appropriate ballot style for that voter. Of course, it's not. Sorry, let me make sure this is working. Maybe that's why. Okay, well, this was working. This is not. Yeah, exactly. Oh, maybe that's it. Okay, well, maybe we'll come back to that. set up. Okay, we'll come back to that. I'll show you our scanning and tabulation software. Okay. So this is what the jurisdiction would see for their ballot scanner. So this scanner to my left, this is a Fujitsu scanner. This is what we use for our ballot scanners. I believe Ricoh just acquired Fujitsu, so they're kind of under a little different name these days. But this is the type of scanner that we would, that all of our customers have. And it's very fast, very capable. I think can do anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 ballots an hour, kind of depending on the operator. And it can scan all of our ballots going up to 30 inches. They scan in grayscale, so they can pretty much scan like any kind of marking utensil, whether that's pen, pencil, blue ink, highlighter, red ink, purple ink, green ink, whatever anybody throws at it, we can scan it with these. So I'll just kind of show you what the scanning looks like, and so that we have some ballots to look at in our new election that we just set up. And this will just take a second, because it does take a second on the first one. And I believe it's a little slower than what you would normally see just because of the way I have to do this demo. So don't kill me for that part. So as you'll see on this interface, on the left here, there's this boxes scanned. Within our system, we would call like a batch of ballots boxes. So a little different terminology than what some are used to. But it shows, as you're scanning the ballots, it shows you how many cards or pieces of paper there are. So just again, for terminology's sake, a ballot could consist of multiple cards if you have a 2-card ballot. This is just a 1-card ballot. So it's always going to refer to it as cards. But it shows in real time how many it's scanning, so that it allows the jurisdiction to, or the scanners, the person who's running the scanner, to double check and say, yeah, this is the right number. There's not an extra sheet of paper or something that fell in there. So they can always keep an eye on that. And then at the same time, so this says 21 cards. Next to it, you'll see this says 0 unreadables. This second one says 2 unreadables. This allows, in real time, you can go back to the other station and look and see what those unreadables are. So again, a damaged ballot of some kind, a damaged card. You can look at that image and say, hey, yeah, that one's folded over. We need to rescan that batch because we can't even see anything on the ballot. Or, no, it's just a torn corner. We can adjudicate that later on. We don't need to remake it. Let's continue on. There's also a number of other stats over here. It just kind of tells you how fast things are going. But we'll finish these off. So this is our tabulation software. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So again, that's, this is all in Google Chrome, so I can zoom in, I can zoom out. It makes it kind of nice to customize that part of it. So let me turn this on so that we can see things. So this is, I'm just turning on vote totals so that we can actually see the totals of things. So this is our dashboard. It just gives the election officials some information about the current election that they're working in. If I refresh it, it'll kind of give us this new information about these ballots that I just scanned. So again, as you see, within just a couple minutes, I was able to scan ballots, and we have results for those ballots. As I mentioned before, with the browser interface, anything that's a blue link we can click on, and it'll give us some kind of report. So we deliver a lot of information to the election officials in this software, and there's several different ways of using it. And if they need very specific reports, we can generate just about anything they need.
Hey, Kyle, you said you could see the vote totals. Is that actual vote totals, or is that card scanned?
So that's vote totals. So that's something you wouldn't turn on until, the polls have closed on election night.
Okay, so if you did turn it on, is there an indication that you turned it on, or is there what are the safeguards around that? Or is there any way that I could go in halfway through, check the vote totals, and then start scanning again?
So good question. So our system, all of our systems log every action, every button push, every click. And so something like turning on vote totals will log that in the logs. And if somebody, were to go back and look at that and see that, Rhonda turned it on halfway through the election, it would show that within those logs. There isn't anything there isn't like a clock or anything that it's dependent on necessarily, but there is a big warning. I'll just show you what that looks like again. So there is a warning to actually turn it on. So if I hit this enabled, it says, are you sure you want to display the vote totals? And only an administrator can do this function. So depending on how you set up your users, there may only be one person that can turn those vote totals on.
Okay, just to follow up on that, Kyle, then, you said it logged every keystroke, basically. Are those logs also printable then for verification, so that could be part of the audit process? Canvas time, they could show the audit log. We didn't look at these results before 7 o'clock on election night. Yeah, they are. So you can export those logs. They're also saved within the election. So let's say, for instance, you back up the election and you want to just remove it off your server so you can kind of start fresh. If you were to ever restore that election, you also restore the logs along with it. So all that retention is contained within those backups as well. But yeah, all those logs are you can generate them. If there's records requests for that information, you can generate those logs as needed.
So if I were to go in as an administrator and look at the totals, does it send things back to adjudication or anything when I start back up with tabulation? Or it would only be somebody looking at the logs that could verify that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So it doesn't necessarily change anything. The user interface will change because now you're able to see a lot more information that you weren't able to before, obviously.
Okay.
But otherwise, there's no other, it doesn't change anything with the adjudication.
So it depends on the integrity of the election official.
Exactly.
That is doing it. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And also just to touch on users and user permissions, I believe there's a new requirement in Colorado for election judges to have their own accounts on the system. So you can create your own users within the system, give them certain permissions that don't allow them to do things like turn on vote totals or create a new election, just kind of give them permissions, whatever they need to do. And you can also do permissions based on the election as well. So you've got a primary coming up in June, and I only want these folks to see this one election or to be able to do anything in this one election. You can set those parameters within those permissions to make sure that they're not poking around in places that they shouldn't be.
So they could just run the tabulator, run the adjudication, and that's
Exactly.
the only permissions. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so we'll just kind of go in and take a look at some of this stuff in here. So unreadable cards, I've mentioned those a few times before. This is a pretty neat feature that we have in here. So again, you may have different reasons for unreadables. And if let me just show that. So this one on here, it says invalid side one checksum. Well, we're not really sure what that means, but we'll go into it and look. If we scroll down, we see this corner's torn off. We don't know why that happened, but it is. And so it wasn't able to read. You'll see these marks on the sides, bottom, and then up at the top here. If any of those are not present or have been tampered with in some way, the system can't tell what kind of ballot it is necessarily. So it's not going to try to do anything with it, but it'll present you with the information and say, hey, you have unreadables here to handle. So normally, the election officials would have to send this ballot back, or the person running the scanner would have to send it back and say, hey, we need this one to be duplicated, remade. And so there would be election judges who would remake that ballot exactly as how the voter voted it. But within our system, we allow the officials to go through and just adjudicate this ballot as they see it. So I'll just kind of show you what that looks like. So I know this is a card style 22 and 3034. So I'm going to say it's votable, and I'll go through and vote it. You'll see here on the right, there's these bubbles and numbers. That shows what the system interpreted was a mark. But on this ballot, because it couldn't read the ballot, it didn't know which one it was, and it wasn't going to make an assumption, there's nothing selected. So I'll go through and select it. So George Smith, Lena, Hector, and Harvey. And then these ones are not selected, and so I'll save that ballot. Now you'll see down here, it says the ballot's been resolved and tabulated. So again, this saves a ton of time from having to remake those ballots. As we know, we're sending these mail ballots out, and they can come back in various, with various properties on them, or things missing from them. So there may be coffee stains that may do something like that. Corner torn. I've seen ones that were just ripped into shreds, and we had the election judges kind of tape them back together like a puzzle, and then figure out how the voter voted, because we want those votes to actually count.
I like that we'll have the images of the original ballot, so there's no question on whether it was duplicated correctly.
Right.
So they can go back and look.
And Kyle, you can also show them with a resolved ballot and how there's a log of the actions taken on that ballot.
I will have to. I'll get to it.
Oh, okay.
From a
Sorry,
different place, yeah.
sorry, didn't want to get ahead of you.
Generally similar process if you had write-in candidates, and you could determine whether it was Mickey Mouse or a real
Yeah,
candidate.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And for write-ins on something like an unreadable, they are able to go through and write the name in whatever that should be. But I'll also touch on write-ins in a little bit too, and what that kind of looks like. Sorry, let me find, because Jerome, that brings up a good. And this is, just to explain where I'm at right now, this is looking at a particular batch or box, and this is all the images or ballots in that So if you'll see here, so this is the ballot that I just adjudicated. On the left here, it says card resolved by or on. There's the date, there's the time, and then there's who actually did it. My name is CBG in this system, so it says which user did it. This is kind of nice too, because again, we're entrusting the election judges to do a lot of this stuff, so you could have a staff member go back and just verify this information. And if they got something wrong, you can see who actually did it. So you'll see down here on the left, green text means that it's a vote for that candidate or choice. Purple means that it's an undervote. And then red, which isn't here, is an overvote. And so it's just it's a quick visual representation of the ballot. And then even from here, you can still modify the adjudication, vote the ballot, and if I needed to change something, I could do that right from the screen. So let me go back, and I'll just show this other one. So this one in particular, you'll see on the left and right side, somebody decided to be funny and cross out all the timing marks, so I wasn't able to read that. This would be the same process of selecting the right card, making sure it's the right ballot so that it's got the right contest, the right content for that, and then you'll go through and manually vote that to make sure that the voters, the candidates are getting the votes that they should be.
Does it have the ballot style on the bottom too? If we had some helpful people last primary that tore off the header because they didn't want us to know what party they were voting. So we're like, thank you.
Yeah, and that's a good thing to bring up because I have seen that as well. Or, it comes back damaged, and that just happened to be the corner that was missing. So again, Colorado requires that style to be in the header. So it would be up here. And then there's a lot of internal information that's at the bottom here that tells you, the precinct that it belongs in, the split that it belongs in, and then the style as well. I'll also point this out too. Next to all that information is this EC number. So this is the election code. That is generated when you build your ballot, and that is unique to every election. So that allows you to not be able to scan ballots from a previous election or maybe you made significant changes with your ballot, and you have, one with an election code here and one with an election code here, and you're going through and testing and you forgot to get the old ballot out of the stack or something. Well, it's going to reject it if it doesn't have the same election code on there. So anytime you do major changes, it's going to change that election code to make sure that you're on the most recent version or a new version of that ballot. But yes, the style is contained, obviously in two different locations. So that makes it a lot easier to identify. Election officials in Colorado are required to look at overvotes. That is primarily what is done in adjudication. So we have this contest report here, and this is really just general information about the number of ballots, how many times the contest was voted in, how many blank votes, it's really undervotes, meaning that they didn't vote in the contest, and then how many overvotes, meaning they crossed the vote for rule. So if it was a vote for 1 and they mark 2, that's where overvotes are going to come up. So any of these tables that you see here, you can sort them. So it makes it easy to find. And this is really the easiest way of doing overvotes. So we'll look at this U.S. Senate race, and I'll just click on the overvoted number. We know that there's 3 total. At the top, you'll see 1 to 1 of 3. So we know that there's 3 of them, and we're on the first one. What this is going to do is it's going to present a crop of only that contest on only that ballot that we're looking at. So this is kind of blown up from what you would normally see when you're adjudicating ballots. So it kind of gives you a good visual representation of what's going on. And also, as we know, sometimes there can be little markings or notes or different kinds of things on the ballot. So this one in particular, they didn't give any kind of intent to, say, I wanted this candidate over this candidate, but we can click on the ballot and go into the ballot and make sure that, hey, there is no other information outside of here. So I don't see anything here that would jump out to me to show voter intent. So, in this case, nobody would get the vote. But if we go to this next one, we see that the voter crossed out Jonathan Hart and then put an arrow and said this one to Adam Martin. So this gives clear voter intent, gives us some instructions on what they wanted. And also, I'll just point out they followed the instructions that are here at the top, so thank you. We appreciate that. So here we would just unmark Jonathan Hart and then look at the rest of the ballot. Typically, we would train and say you should proceed through the rest of the ballot to make sure that you've captured everything, because sometimes we see multiple mistakes. And then we'll save this ballot. So again, on the left here, we see that it was resolved at this time by this user, and that the manual resolution was replaced the automatic adjudication. And then over here, you'll see the R next to Jonathan Hart's name, so that was removed. And then Adam Martin, his name is in green, so he gets the vote here.
So automatic adjudication just meaning how it tallied it, how it read it the first time through?
Yeah, exactly. So how it's reading the ovals. So, if it sees a mark in the oval, then it's saying, a good mark, then it's saying, yeah, I see this as a vote, or some kind of mark. So that's all the automatic part means. And then this one, they crossed out everything, and so they did that on the rest of the ballot, so we don't know what they wanted. There's no intent, so we're just going to leave those as overvotes. But you'll see here on the left, all this text is red, so that's indicating overvotes there. Additionally, for recounts, this also comes in very handy. So for a recount, a jurisdiction has to look at all undervotes. Undervotes can be vast. There can be a lot of them. This is only 40 ballots in this of what I scanned, and so there could be tens of thousands, and so they may have to look at hundreds or thousands of undervotes. So they can look at this blank voted section, and we know that there's 8 of them in here, and we need to look at all 8 of them. We can look at sections of 100 or groups of 100, or we can look at all of them, and the election judges can really just scroll through and take a look at all of these. Like something in this instance and all, they would go through and mark that ballot to make sure that it got the vote, because this wasn't captured because there was nothing within the oval. Again, touching back on my previous experience, I have run recounts in the system before, and I've seen thousands of overvotes, and I've seen election judges adjudicate thousands of overvotes in this undervotes, in this method in, literal minutes, because they can just scroll through and see all this information just so fast. So I'll move on to write-ins. Write-ins are also very easy in our system. They're very quick to adjudicate. So we'll see here, so on this particular contest, we have a write-in line. We have 4 different write-ins that need to be adjudicated. In Colorado, you have to be a certified write-in candidate to have your votes tallied for you. In other states, that's not the case. So Peyton Manning and Mayor McCheese would, receive votes in those elections. But in this case, we're just going to say John Howe is our only certified write-in candidate. So I would just add him to the list, and then I just go through and click on these, and that's it. And then for the other ones, I'm just going to say they're invalid. Mayor McCheese and Peyton Manning, they are invalid. I keep mentioning saving time. Again, this allows election judges, and I'm talking election judges, not our election officials. They can figure this out very fast and go through hundreds of these in minutes. I've seen it done multiple times. It's very, very quick, very, very easy, because all the information is presented to them right there, and all they have to do is just toggle things on and off and just click on the names.
So when we have an unopposed write-in that thousands of people mark, this would have saved 2 days.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if there's thousands, I would say, especially if it's the same name over and over again, it gets very fast to do. And then you can actually filter and filter out, you know, your invalids. So you could go through and mark off all your invalids, and then, you know, filter those out, and then really get into the nitty-gritty of the real names.
Yeah, they were mostly blank. They just marked it. So this would have made it super quick.
So we can also filter those kinds of things too. So if I go back to this mark type, we're looking at filled ovals. So I can also do unfilled ovals if there's text only on the line. So we can look at that information too, because our system, and I'll show you a little bit more about that here next, but our system doesn't just look at the ovals, but it looks at the entire section for where the candidate or the write-in line is. So we can capture that uncaptured intent, like writing on a write-in line with an unfilled oval, or circling a candidate's name without actually crossing through the oval. We can actually look at that information as well. So what I'll go into next, this is our patented vote visualization. So this is really kind of how we got our start. Our founder, Larry Moore, actually has a TED Talk about this. It's really interesting to see and how elections can be viewed much closer. So this is the vote visualization, that's what we call it, for the candidate Jonathan Hart in the United States Senate contest that's on this ballot. So we can see, this is filtered to 100 ovals. There's obviously only, you know, I don't know how many particularly on this one, but you can change that filter and show, you know, a couple thousand ovals at a time, and you can actually see every single individual oval that you need to see. If you look up here, you'll see all these different kinds of marks. That's because those are the different marks on all the different ballots. You'll see different variations. So like this one, they didn't fully fill it in. They just kind of circled around it, they being me. This one was highlighter. You know, this one wasn't fully filled in. A star, an X, just a little squiggly mark, check marks, you know, slashes through the ovals. So why this becomes important, because this allows the election officials to go through and actually look at this information and make that determination to say, you know, this one looks a little funny. We should take a closer look at it and make sure that this is actually what they intended to mark. Because, you know, no system is perfect, and, you know, there may be marks that are picked up, or maybe the voter, you know, maybe their child was drawing on their ballot. We've seen a number of those where you'll see doodles or something like that, or they made a hesitant mark, and they didn't realize that they didn't read the instructions on how to change things.
Love notes that went across the oval.
Oh my gosh, yeah, all those love notes. That's, yeah, they're fun to read. So, you know, you can kind of just hover over some of these. So, you know, we'll just take a look at them and just say, you know, I'm not really sure what this is. Let's just take a closer look and see. And if we go to the ballot, we'll see, oh, that's how they marked all of their ovals. There's a consistent pattern here, so we know that, you know, we can take voter intent into account and say that this is how they intended to vote. This is what they wanted to do. And there may be other situations where, you know, maybe they did make a mark, so let's, you know, I'm not sure what that is. Oh, that's how they made their mark. So you can really go dive in and make sure that's how the vote should be counted, or how voter intent should be looked So this section up here, it's called least confident votes. It's kind of a misnomer. It's just ordered by the least confident, and the least confident being the last one in the list. So this first one being the most confident, this being the least confident. And it does that by, you'll see a number of different stats in that pop-up. So it's looking at the density of the oval, how much of the oval's marked. And it's also looking at all of the ovals on the entire ballot to really create a floor to say, this is how I think the voter marked all of their ovals. This is how I think, what I think a good oval looks like. And that's going to come into play a little bit further down this list. Additionally, we can see overvoted contests for that candidate. So those are the two ballots that we actually just looked at. So we can see those. And I kind of mentioned this at the very beginning. We give a lot of the information to the election officials. It's really up to you how you want to handle it. So you could adjudicate your overvotes from here. You could do it how I just showed you from the contest report. It's really up to them and what kind of works best for their system and how they want to do things. So, I could go back to the same ballot, click on it, and go through and adjudicate it right from there. So we don't set those parameters. It's really just like an open database, and we just kind of allow you to do things. This next section here, so these are undervoted contests where they didn't choose anybody in the contest, but this allows us to see those kinds of things that you wouldn't normally see because maybe they didn't mark an oval. So you'll see with these two particular ones, again, these images are much larger, so they're actually showing the entire candidate or choice in that contest, so it's very wide. So it's looking and it's analyzing for anything outside of the oval as well. And so that's why this information is here. We can sort this by uncaptured intent, so it moves everything up to the top where it thinks there's extra marks. So for an instance like this, they circled all of the candidates that they want. So we would go in and mark that for them. Also, this is shown up in a section on our dashboard, cards that are fully blank down here. So that is another requirement in Colorado that has to be looked at during adjudication. So you have to look at all fully blank cards. So this is one of those that would qualify for that. So we would go through and just like an unreadable, we would mark these for them. It's the same way of doing it. It's not any different. And then we would save that. And then those candidates or choices would receive that credit there. Same with on this one. They just underlined everything, and so we would go through and mark those to make sure that they got credit. So that's kind of where our system really stands out, is that we're able to see a lot of extra information. And it gives you a lot of confidence in the results that you're producing. This last section down here, least confident non-votes. So this means that there was a vote for another candidate in that contest, but there was a mark in the oval where it just made a determination and it said, I don't think this is actually a vote for this candidate. So the system is making that kind of determination based on that floor, based on how filled in that oval is, but the information is presented to the election officials on this page, and it's sorting it with anything within that oval up to the top left. So kind of the opposite from that very first section. So for instance, this first one, if we click on that, we'll see over here it gave a vote to George Smith, the first candidate, because the oval was filled in, whereas it didn't give anything to Jonathan Hart. It didn't mark it as an overvote because there wasn't enough of a mark in there based on all the other ovals and how they were filled in. But again, it allows you to go in and actually look at that. And, we should probably make sure that maybe should or shouldn't be a vote for that candidate. This one here, so we see a little bit of a dot. I guess it's easier to see here. We see a little bit of a dot inside the oval. We all know that as a pen rest. where somebody may be resting their pen inside the oval, thinking about voting for Jonathan Hart, and then they decided to vote for Adam Martin instead. So again, same situation. The ovals are well filled in, so that pen rest doesn't really throw anything off. This page is extremely important and really gives a lot of confidence in going into the post-election risk-limiting audit. And I say that because once we've started that audit, the election judges are making a determination based on the piece of paper of what they think the votes should be for that ballot. Well, we don't have a lot of control over that, and you can't be standing over their shoulder and telling them what it is, because it's kind of their job to make the interpretation of the ballot. But they could see something like a slash or a dot through a ballot and say, well, maybe I should, that should be a vote or something like that. Or even at the top of this section, maybe something did come through and you looked at it and you said, I don't think that should be a vote because of how they mark the rest of their ovals. So you can really fine tune and make sure that everybody's receiving the vote that they should be, and that your audit is going to be clean, and that everybody's going to fully understand how everything should be. Or maybe the system captured something it shouldn't have, and the judges go and put that into the audit and say, yeah, that's a vote, whereas you and your system didn't even notice. It's just, it allows you to go through every single one of these and make sure that everything's clean before you go into the audit. So that's something I really like to point out. I've personally, again, when I was with Douglas, I ran, I think, 8 or 9 risk limiting audits with this system. Also using the system to verify the ballot to make sure that it was the right one that we pulled out. That's something else that can be done in the system very fast. But we've had clean audits, and they still continue to run very clean audits in Douglas. So then we have a number of reports that we can generate. You can generate your kind of official looking PDF reports that maybe you'd print out and kind of hand to anybody who's hanging out, commissioners. We can also export our data for, we can also export data for the state election night reporting system. That is in a custom Colorado format based on certification standards, so the election officials can just upload it directly into that system. And then we can also we can back up the election. So as we mentioned before, backing up will back up the database, your logs, all that information, as well as the ballot images, and they're all in a TIFF format, I believe. And so those are, it backs up to an external hard drive, and then you can just take that hard drive to something else and get all those images off and fill your records requests or whatever you need to do with them. We can also export the cast vote record. Cast vote record is essentially the digital version of all your paper ballots, all the choices on every single ballot, every ballot by line. And this is also used in the post-election risk limiting audit. And that's in a Colorado-specific format for their software as well. So it's really just a one-to-one. You just upload it straight into their software without having to make any changes. And I think that's about it for clear count. If there's any questions with this one.
Do you find that it makes any difference, or it's harder to work with the state when we have goofy things like we have this year, being only 2 clear ballot counties when everything is pretty much aimed at Dominion?
I haven't had any issues. I'm the main point of contact with the state, and I obviously have a great relationship with Jesse and Dwight and the team there. But even as a company, like, I haven't had, they treat us fairly. You know, they don't treat us any different than Dominion, even though we have a lot smaller footprint. And whenever I've had a request, they respond promptly. So I haven't noticed that at all. And our system meets all the same requirements as the other system. So, and obviously biased, but our imaging software really is game changing. You know, we've heard from multiple counties here in Colorado and even throughout the U.S. when especially talking about write-ins and recounts. That's something that just people aren't used to. They're used to hours and days on recounts and write-ins, whereas like Kyle showed, like we can access this data right now and resolve it right now within the county or jurisdiction's processes and rules, right? But it's all right here versus really a lot of paperwork heavy stuff that happens, you know, when you go through those processes of write-ins and recounts.
And I'll just kind of throw in too from my perspective. I know all those guys at the state too. They all have my cell phone number. They have kept me in touch, about a lot of this stuff with the primary because Douglas is going through it as well. So we've been in constant communication. They've invited me into meetings. So it's gotten better, especially, coming as a customer, I'd seen it a little bit, but, I know Jesse very well. I know Dwight very well. So, those guys are always kind of keeping me up to date as well.
Maybe they leave you alone a little bit.
Yeah, there's probably
Like,
a little bit of that.
You do your thing over there. And
They have a lot more work with all the other counties. So we are small. We only have the 2 counties. And the 2 counties that we do have, they're very autonomous. So they know what they're doing. Both Douglas and Garfield are well-run shops, and they do a great job.
We do want to leave enough time for more extensive questions too, so I don't know how much more demo you have, but if we can just be cognizant of that.
Yeah, and we can,
Good point.
we can kind of mess with this later, but just so that you can see it.
Okay.
Okay, now we got it. Again, this is kind of the interface that we saw before. It's a very simple to use interface. You can kind of hear the audio coming out of it. So I'll just vote a ballot so that we can print one out. And anybody's welcome to mess with this later too.
So this is the device that either ADA or somebody that wanted to vote in person would use.
Right, so it's primarily ADA use, or at least in Colorado, most of our customers just use it for ADA use, but it can be used as a primary ballot marking device. Messed up and transported.
And so one thing I brought too is 2 separate quotes, and these are I brought 4 copies, so one for each of you, and you'll see basically one number or for 2 different terms, 6 years and 8 years. And it includes everything, equipment, service, everything. And we can provide a more detailed line item quote. But really, at the bottom line is we want to earn your business and make it simple to transition to us. And so the 2 different numbers, one is for 6 years, one is for 8 years, and it includes equipment, service, training, everything you all need to run successful elections in Elbert County. And so those were the marching orders to us. They said, we want their business, we want to be competitive, and give you all this information, and then have it before you when you make your decision.
So is this considered then a lease or a purchase of the equipment?
Whichever you prefer. I know some counties here in Colorado like purchase, and I believe it seems like most that I've talked to anyway, lease. So whichever you all prefer. And it includes also when we upgrade. Right now, our last, so to get back to your question about the standards, so there's two different standards. The system that's here, and we have our final system that's under the will soon be sunsetted version of the voting system standards, voluntary VVSG 1.0. So we have our last VVSG 1.0 system under test at the EAC right now, and which will include support for ranked choice voting, and so that, and then here over the next little while, year, 2 years, we'll be submitting our system for our VVSG 2.0 system. That's the newest voting system standard. And so as we transition to that over the next several years, because that's going to be a while before it goes through testing, and whatnot. But so it really depends on you all if you prefer purchase or lease. But either way, it includes whatever upgrade. So when we bring ClearVote 2.5 into Colorado, and we get through that process, it'll include that, getting that, your software.
Whatever extra equipment there is with that.
Mm-hmm. And equipment-wise, really shouldn't be anything extra. I mean, all it really is, the main difference between 2.3, which is certified here, we do have 2.4, which is a more New York specific, because they have their ballot layouts just different. But then 2.5 includes the support for ranked choice voting, and that's kind of, as far, and there will be, different scanners are included in that with the 2.5 system, but that's just the nature of this business, with especially using commercial scanners, is that they tend to bring out new models of scanners every couple years, and so it'll include.
So if we had a printer that broke, was unrepairable, that would be replaced under both, whether it was a lease or a purchase.
Right.
And if we have to get the different scanners, then do you just replace them, or do we have to buy those?
We'd just do a replacement.
Okay.
Yeah, so the orders were really clear to me. They said, we want Elbert County's business. So it is important to ask those questions, right? Because stuff breaks, issues happen, especially, it's electronics, computers go end of life. We deal with that constantly. We use commercial off the shelf laptops and servers, just like pretty much every voting system company, and just like personal use, and every company who uses a computer has to deal with end-of-life products. So that's something that we update according to what's happening with supply chain. So
When we had to go to full-face ballots and be able to print the 22-inch, we had to go back and buy those scanners.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, ours comes fully supporting, as Kyle said, for sure 22 inches, and our ClearMark ADA device does support up to 30-inch ballots, and that's on the thermal roll. That's when we bring 2.5 into Colorado, it's going to include that ClearMark device. So a slightly different version of the ADA device we see here at the table.
I guess either for you or Rhonda, have you shared the master service agreement with us, or have we looked at the master?
We don't have
okay.
everything like that.
Yeah.
Which is, obviously
something
our attorney will pick through.
Yeah, so we'll I didn't know what to bring, and so I just want to bring the numbers, and then like legal, contract stuff, we send to you all.
Going back to, I used to like end of life on the computers, and you mentioned earlier that you assemble the equipment. Did I understand that correctly?
Yep.
And so, two-part question. I understand some of the components aren't available domestically, so they have to be procured outside of the country. Is that correct?
Well, like kind of every piece of technology, when it comes to like processors, the electronics on the printed circuit boards, for instance, pretty much all come from overseas. But as far as the mechanical equipment that we assemble with our devices, they are manufactured. We do that assembly and manufacture from the U.S. And so like the electronic stuff, like CPUs, those things. Just the nature of electronics in the U.S., right? Like come from sources overseas.
So along with that, I know Kyle mentioned this earlier too, about it being air gap, but there's absolutely no wireless device of any kind in the machines.
Yeah, so in our ADA devices, there is no wireless at all. In our laptops, just because elections make such a small footprint, they typically come with Bluetooth hardware, but in our hardening, just like pretty much every vendor in our industry is disabling wireless capability. So if there is a wireless functionality on a server or laptop, our hardening scripts disable that, and that's when it goes through testing, the independent testing, that's also something that's tested as well, is that the wireless is disabled for like in the case of a commercial off-the-shelf laptop, like a Dell laptop, if it has wireless on it, like a wireless hardware component on it, that functionality is disabled.
Is there any way to get those without them?
It looks like there's a trend working that way, because there are states that require, like Ohio, where we have a pretty big footprint. It has a requirement for no wireless, even on the hardware side, and so it looks like we're kind of making some headway with the commercial off-the-shelf vendors like the HPs, Dells, for that to be something that just is manufactured that way. But it's one of those things where we're such a small industry compared to how laptops are used everywhere that I think it looks like it's kind of coming around, especially where states that require, like, the removal or non-existence of the wireless, like stuff that we can control, like our ADA devices have no wireless. Other stuff that's out of our control, like the laptops, that's something where we just have to disable it, on the software side.
Okay, I'll keep digging here.
Sure.
So when you place the orders for the laptops or the computers from Dell or whoever it is that you get, obviously they're aware that those are going to be used for election equipment because you all are the ones doing it. Does it also tied back to Elbert County that these specific equipment is being ordered that's going to go to Elbert County?
Not on their side. It will be on our side. Like they'll ship bulk laptops to us, and then from there, our procurement.
Then so you just get them in bulk. It wouldn't be that this crate is everything that we've got for Elbert County, and it.
Right. It'll come from Clear Ballot, because they'll ship that to our facility, and then from there, because we have our tracking process where it's like, okay, these laptops with these ID numbers are going to Elbert County.
Okay.
And I think just to add on to that, for commercial off-the-shelf warranty purposes, they do have some of that information, because if you have issues with your Dell or Lenovo computer, you would use the COTS warranty provider to get service on that kind of equipment. So that is maintained, and I think those are like 6 or 7 year warranties. They're pretty long warranties.
And so when those warranties expire, what's the process then?
Actually, I just dealt with this with Douglas. You can bring them under your, if your county IT has a warranty, like a warranty program with Dell, you can bring them under your county warranty, or you can replace them. I know there's a number of them out there that have not been under warranty for years that folks are still using that are fine.
Okay.
If I could jump in, you had mentioned Ohio specifically has something in place or pending that restricts the use of wireless. How are you responding to that, or is it set in law to take effect when it becomes available?
Yeah, that one's a little different in that like, because they're obviously aware of the situation where all vendors are, and when it comes to the stuff that we just can't control, that we're not a computer making company, right? Like, and so it's the same there, where they for now have to provide exceptions to the COTS hardware, just because them at like the Dells and HP as an industry haven't come this way yet as far as providing that in an affordable way, right? I mean, so it looks like, and that is a trend, but Ohio's also different too, where like they have poll books that use a lot of commercial off the shelf, Apple iPads and things like that, where they have other issues they kind of got to work through. Whereas obviously here in Colorado, we don't have poll books and electronic poll books like other states have. So that is a concern, obviously, to, if we could and had the power, we would definitely like, hey, because we don't use the wireless capability for anything. And so that's our preferred, and I would think that would be the same for other vendors as well, as if they had the capability to not include the hardware part of the wireless, even better, right? Like there's just no need for it.
I think our preference would be during a potential contract period, if it became available, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think our preference would be.
Yeah, like our largest customer is Cuyahoga County, which is Cleveland, and that's the same for, and we have other jurisdictions in Ohio that are our customers as well, where that's something that we're definitely tracking and trying our best to work within the customer requirements.
Random questions now. The transport case for going out to the remote VSPCs and so forth, I assume there's a place on there for logs and seals and all that so that it can be verified that it hasn't been tampered with if it's left overnight.
Yeah, so there's, I guess I can bring that up, but there's a number of clasps that kind of keep it closed. And I don't know if we can see it on here, but on the handles, any of the doors, we also have a kind of a metal piece on each side with a hole in it, so you can put a zip seal through it or some kind of seal through. You know, you can put the tape seals on anywhere, but really the zip seals, anywhere that a door opens, there is a place to put a seal there.
Yeah, so that the roadie cases, you can see at the very top there, there's those latches there. So when you close that, there's two holes. You can put zip seals or any kind of seals over. Yep, where Kyle has the mouse, and then the door where the printer's housed. There's a latch there where you can put seals, and are pretty robust cases, which are nice and really great for especially providing the zip seals, which I think, in my opinion, are a lot better than the tape seals that just fall off and you can't even get any real tamper evidence, right? It's kind of a joke, but like these are nice because they have like the zip tie where it's like, okay, you'd someone would physically have to cut it and then you'd be able to see if that device was tampered with, or the case was anyway.
And also these cases, because of their strength, they're stackable too. This one in particular for clear access or clear mark's very heavy with the thermal printer in it. So you might need, you know, a forklift or something, but they are stackable. That's how robust they are. I don't know if anybody's used any of the old equipment, but some of that stuff was all plastic, and if it fell over, it broke. That's not the case with here.
So this is self-contained, so it's roll up, open the case, there's one plug in and it's ready to roll?
I probably should have mentioned that earlier. It's literally one cable to plug it in, turn on the power for the printer, and you know, you're ready to go. So, I mean, you can set this thing up in a matter of seconds as well. It's just flipping open the lid and plugging it in.
Last one for me right now. I know there's been a lot of talk over the last couple of years, and I think you mentioned it briefly, of posting the ballot images online for people to be able to see. And that's part of what your audit you've done with other counties here as well. If we went with you all, would we be able to take advantage of that as part of our contract?
Yeah, that is one of those products that is on like the case-by-case basis, right? Because like some states don't allow ballot images at all to be public record, and in states that do, with the, you know, some customers still don't even want to use it other than if they have like a direct request. But yeah, that's easy enough for us to do. Yep.
We actually have another product that I don't think it's been completely advertised yet, but I think Dane County, Wisconsin is using it. It's called View Now, and it's another kind of portal that you know, we can put up. I don't think it's ready for the public quite necessarily, but other election officials can use it. And so in the future, we will have something that's usable. Douglas County actually kind of piloted it. We had a number of pilots with it and got good responses with it.
Just a question on, excuse me, the quotes. Technical support, software licensing, hardware warranty, scanner cleaning. Is this separate from the actual hardware itself, or is this encompass?
That's all encompassing.
Okay.
Yep,
And
so,
that was-
you know, and
guess
that's where we can provide a detailed breakdown of those things, but really for us, I'm not exaggerating, because Kyle and I were both in Nashua last week for training, and I guess that's something else I should add, is that we developed our own training for customers called Clear Ballot Academy, and so we're going to be, over the next year, launching like e-learning platform for customers to just log in. We'll always provide on-site training. That'll always be something we do, but you're bringing on election judges, and you just want to teach them about adjudication. They can, we'll be able to have the capability to log into Clear Ballot Academy and just do adjudication training, on an as-needed basis. So Kyle and I were both part of Clear Ballot Academy last week for our own staff training. But when talking about Elbert County, the message was pretty clear to me. Like, we don't want them to worry about anything. Licensing, training, because especially Kyle, being a previous customer, had the more technical questions, and he's like, nope, this is it. This is what we're giving. I'm like, okay. So.
And again, I wasn't thinking you were trying to pull something. I just want to make sure.
No.
It's a separate hardware
perfectly
cost
understandable.
on top of this, so.
I mean, it is perfectly understandable, and in the actual contract, we'll make sure that it satisfies and any of the requirements or things you all need to see.
I assume that was sized based on the equipment that you need to operate an election, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we basically
Hardware called out specifically.
we basically based it off 2 scanners, 7 ADA devices, and including the laptops, like the laptop for the scan station that you'll need. So that's what that number is based off of your current equipment inventory.
Very much appreciated. That's the questions I have. I'm kind of curious. I know you're very close to your system. You've been is there something we haven't heard that you feel is important just because you're close to it and you don't notice it, or
It just occurred to me, a quick question on the ADA device. Is it just a code on there? Do you have voter cards? How do you program the ballot for the voter?
Yeah, so when you set up your ballot, you would program in a specific code for the voter. That wouldn't be for the voter to enter, it would be for the poll worker to enter the code to basically generate the ballot. We do also have barcode scanners that you can use. I don't think we have any kind of system of producing those in Colorado yet with SCORE, but there is that option available. With Clear Mark, we also have activation cards, but that's, again, something that's usually generated out of a poll book rather than with our system. So the process with this would be, at least as it stands right now, is a poll worker would take the voter over to the system, enter the voter PIN only known by them, and it's the same PIN for every device. They enter that voter PIN and select the ballot style, the appropriate ballot style for them, and then allow them to vote.
So same process we have now, just we use an activation card and then put in the the code for whatever ballot.
Yeah, so this just, I guess, same process, just no card.
Okay. Are there any challenges for this system? Like if you could change something, wish list, or what doesn't it have that you wish there was, or?
Yeah, we kind of all went through that last week, especially our field service group and our customer relations managers, because they're working with customers all the time. And then like even like me, I'm like, it'd be nice if we had a little question mark there to like on the Clear Design side, like a little pop-up that says, explains what we mean by this, that kind of thing. That's my perspective. Kyle might have a little more there, but yeah, just that, to me, it's just as someone who's a non-user, it's like, oh, that'd be nice to have. But also, the regulatory side of me is like understanding we just can't operate that way, right? Like it's just all the neat features and things we'd like to include, because we have to take into account customers across the U.S., including the federal government, of like as far as federal certification goes, that it all just takes time and trying to just meet so many different needs. There's just so much we can do feature-wise to make sure that we actually have products that can be used in elections, right?
From my perspective of using the system, I've seen it really since it was first introduced in Colorado until today. There's been continuous improvements. There's a number of improvements that were built in a couple versions ago that I was actually able to provide feedback to the company. So that's kind of another thing. We love to hear the feedback. We want to hear about those new features or those things that just kind of bother you of like, hey, I wish it worked this way. And to Jerome's point, we can't get everything in there, but we can certainly try to get as much as we can in there. So they're always listening to feedback. Just for your purposes, I will say one thing that we can't do is we can't import ballot styles from SCORE. So that, if you're running an election by ballot style, you can't necessarily import those, but there are ways that we can do things. Our system is extremely flexible. Douglas County is doing some crazy things over there to make it work the way that they want it to work. And so that customization piece is where we really shine. And we're able to make it work the way that you want it to work. But that is just something to note. It's very specific to Colorado. Doesn't happen anywhere else. But again, because the certification piece, the development piece takes so long, it's probably not something we'll see anytime soon. But if you're running elections by precinct, none of that matters. And then another thing I'll say too, our adjudication can be a little difficult to train election judges. It's really helpful if they already know how to use a computer and Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge, something like that. So your most technical election judges, get them in the adjudication because they'll pick it up really quickly. But it can be a little clunky, but not impossible at all. I've trained all kinds of folks on it, and within a couple hours they were very quick and they got it. They knew exactly where to click and what to do. But for our future version, very far down the road, there's been plenty of discussion and feedback about our current products and how they look and how they act. And so all that's being taken into account for way down the road and what we're going to be producing for VVSG 2.0.
Have you worked with Dominion, or you just worked with Clear Ballot?
I've only Clear Ballot and Hart. I've never worked with Dominion.
Because I know the programming is a challenge for me.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what I've heard. I don't have any experience in it, but we gave another demo recently to another small county who has the vendor program their ballot for them, and they said the most painstaking process for them was setting up their tabulation system. And so that's why I kind of show, that process of exporting it out of your ballot design software, importing it into your tabulation system, and it's done in seconds. And they were amazed by that because they said that they had, it was painful for them to spend 4 hours or something on a checklist to go through everything. We don't know if that's correct or not, but it was difficult for them. So, this is a very easy thing to set up. Our ballot design software is also very intuitive. Once you get in there and do things, like I said, the world's really your oyster at that point. You can do a lot of different custom things, or you can do custom things that one time and then just import your data every other time and just move things around and do what you need to do, place your headers, change your text, and have a ballot ready to go, ready to proof within, a very short amount of time.
That'll be awesome. Yeah, a lot of the clerks are not very technical, so it's pretty challenging. I can do it. I have an expert with me, but It is. It's one of those, like when you're using Word and you put one more thing on the page and the whole thing jumps off the page, that kind of thing. And when your brain is tired, it's.
Yeah, and it's a short time to get that done too. You don't have a lot of time, so yeah, speed is definitely a good thing, but you want to make sure it's accurate too. So that's why our generation, our layout is just, it's so fast, it's quick to get that visual representation of what it's actually going to look like. Like I said, I've used older systems in the past where you kind of sat for a while, let it do its thing, and then you didn't necessarily get the final thing, or you could never back up and go back to a previous version. Ours is pretty open-ended and allows you to make those quick on-the-fly changes.
Are the manuals pretty simple to find?
Yeah, so we've got a number of manuals. They're actually up on the Secretary of State's website because they're required to be posted publicly. So those are all out there. They're very large. You know, they've got everything in there, or just about everything you would need. Obviously, for anything custom that you're trying to do, it's not going to get too into the weeds, but there is a lot of information. We also have a number of quick guides that are very helpful, especially for our poll workers out in the field. I mean, these are like, you know, front and back one-pagers of here's how you set it up, here's how you open the polls, here's how you get somebody voting, and here's how you close the polls. And we've heard great feedback because there's drawings and stuff that really make it easy. We also, kind of along the same lines of training, we also have a video library for all of our products. And they're just short, like 1 to 3 minute videos on how to do this specific task. And those are extremely helpful too. Because you don't want to sit and watch, you know, I don't want to sit and watch an hour and a half long training when I just need to know this one thing. So we have these quick kind of videos to show you how to do this one thing, this one specific thing. And we've heard great feedback about that as well.
What are some timelines? So if we decide to go with you guys, as far as, you know, when would the transition happen, and how much training is there to just the setup and initial getting us going?
Yeah, so we're already certified for 2-3 here, which is nice. So then we just work with the state to, you know, once we deliver the equipment, to install Trusted Build. And so it would be kind of that, one, the equipment schedule, like, you know, when your timeline, you know, when you would, you know, look at your 25 calendar and say, okay, this is the time frame. We're looking to, you know, start working with the equipment, and then work with our procurement people and the state to then schedule, okay, delivery and then Trusted Build. And then from there, you'd work with Kyle on working on a training schedule, because Kyle is the customer relationship manager for Colorado. And so you'd work with him on developing that training schedule and kind of go from there. So really just what your timeline looks like, and then, you know, scheduling kind of what we need to deliver here, and then, you know, working with the state to come and install the Trusted Build.
So they come and install it after we get it, or will the initial equipment come already with the Trusted Build?
They have to install the Trusted Build.
We've had it where we had it, it was already installed, they installed it at a warehouse.
Oh yeah, and I've done that before. Like when I worked for the state, like one time we went down to a warehouse in Texas and had it installed, a bunch of Trusted Build on stuff down there. But for us, it would come here to the county, and then, I mean, it'll come with the version on it, but the state will still have to install the Trusted Build software by their requirements.
Not to jump in, but I know we have another scheduled event at 1. We can keep going and order some lunch, or if we think we're going to go longer, or okay. Oh, and I don't want to cut this short because it's very important to us.
But when we're available, Rhonda, you have our contact information. If you all need to reach out to us, we're a phone call away. Glad to answer any questions on phone or email. And yeah, we're available. So appreciate the time.
Very much appreciate really the thorough rundown of, I mean, obviously it's important to us, it's been important to our citizens, and we want to make the right choice. So both of you, thank you for coming in.
Yeah.
Alice, did you?
Yeah, I think the next thing we would like to see is the MSA.
Okay.
So we can start looking and see exactly what that looks like. Obviously, we haven't made a decision yet on where we're headed. That's our 1 o'clock time, and then we'll once we get all the numbers and stuff, then we'll have to sit down and definitely include election staff and where we want to go as a direction. But that seeing the details in that contract, I think, is going to be vital for us.
Yep.
I really appreciate you guys coming out and spending the time. Very informative, and really appreciate it.
Sure. And question for me, and if you don't know, that's fine. But when is your anticipated time frame? Like when is the budget cycle for Elbert? Is it July to July or?
We're at January through
Oh, gotcha.
December, but certainly we begin kind of our budget planning cycle in June,
Gotcha.
where kind of our left and right limits for big things will be decided early.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks again for allowing us to have this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.
Close this out.